Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the UK Glamping podcast hosted by us here at Glamptect. Today we are going to be talking all things finance, so with that in mind we have another special guest as always. Welcome along James Bremridge, Director at Principal Business Finance. Thanks for joining us, James.
No problem, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
No problem at all. So last we saw each other, obviously it was a couple of weeks ago, down at the Glamping show.
Yeah, busy weekend.
How's it all been for you since then?
Great, actually. The weekend was really good. Obviously, the 3 days, we've got to start off with about the weather. It's a classic British conversation.
Yeah.
It held up all
100%.
right. It was really good, actually. We got that beautiful sun on Saturday. People were out in droves to come and see what it was about. So no complaints, and it held up all the way up until that Saturday night.
We got so lucky, didn't we? Actually having it down at like 5 minutes after closing. So
yeah, it was crazy. It was great. Yeah, and then pretty much for the week after that, it's just been raining non-stop, which has been lucky. But yeah, it was really good for us. We had about 97 inquiries in terms of prospective clients that want to set up and have chats with us. We had a handful of potential suppliers like yourself, introducers that want to work with us. And then we had the seminar slot on Saturday, so we've got to actually present to some budding entrepreneurs that want to get set up and set up the space ourselves. So it was fantastic.
I'm doing I've signed myself up for a seminar at the Farm Innovation Show in November.
Nice.
So I'm still plotting that myself. How did you find all of that? Did that go pretty smoothly?
Yeah, really good. Had some good questions from a few people. It wasn't full, but we had about a handful, 20 or 30 people in there, which was quite nice. Just in the booth. One recommendation: make sure you take a bottle of water, because I tell you what, once you're standing up there and you're talking for 20 minutes or so, you get a very dry mouth. And to tell you, I had to run off and grab me a glass of water because I started to dry up a little bit.
Nice, top tip. I'll certainly bear that in mind. Yeah. So if anyone else is, I don't know if you're going to the Farm Innovation Show yourself, but if anyone else didn't get a chance to see us at the Glamping Show as Glamptect and Pod Factory, we'll be there in November. Please come along to the seminar, so I'm not talking to a bunch of empty seats.
I'll be in the front row cheering you on. I'll be like,
perfect, happy days. Thanks very much. So, with that all in mind, tell our listeners, viewers, a little bit about who you are and what it is you do.
Yeah, of course. So I'm the Director of Principal Business Finance. We're intermediary and consultant. So we have circa 90 lenders. It's changing all the time. We get more and less depending on who we have on panel. And we really want to be the one-stop shop for all our business customers' sort of financing and funding needs. Whether it's a straightforward business loan, sort of cash straight into your account to use for cash flow or marketing and things like that. Equipment finance, vehicle finance, so your pods, ATVs, tractors, trailers, all your sort of traditional things that you HP or lease. And then also we sort of differentiate ourselves a little bit by doing development finance, bridge finance, and property-based finance, like commercial mortgages. So we want to do that whole package for our clients, because you'll speak to a lot of people and they'll do one area but not the other. So you're sort of being passed from pillar to post. We want to bring those customers under one roof, handle them all the way from inception of idea all the way through to completion and operation of the business, really, and then taking it from there.
Yeah, that obviously financing is a massive part of anybody's consideration that is setting up a glamping site and coming to us. And that is absolutely one of the biggest hurdles that we've had up until now, is finding someone that can cover the whole gambit, potentially. Because there are a lot of people that will kind of asset finance the units, but finding someone that can potentially cover those extraneous costs and groundworks and the whole kind of nose to tail solution has been really tricky for us. So it's fantastic to hear that they can do that.
That's where I want to slot in. So, I used to work for previous brokers where we only did one or the other. And, we'd have customers come to us and say, but, I need a commercial mortgage, or I need to buy the land, or I need to develop sites and what. And, we had to turn them away and say, no, sorry, we don't do that. And it felt like I couldn't provide that whole package for customers. I wanted to be there for the whole project and really help them all the way through. So, now developing their own business and focusing on that sort of whole project sort of needs, we can do it really, which is quite nice.
Fantastic. I don't understand the ins and outs of finance in a great detail as the current market has. I spent a few years as a kind of in-branch financial advisor for a bank, many lifetimes ago.
Nice.
it makes me wonder, when it comes to things like traditional business mortgages that you touched on there, are they an option for a customer who's perhaps only just getting the land and setting up and doesn't have any kind of accounts history or any kind of history of to demonstrate, or does it have to go down a different path?
No, so like you say, it does depend on the customer. Every customer has sort of different financial standings, different credit ratings, different things they're bringing forward when actually setting up the business and getting started. But most of the businesses that we work with are new starts, helping them get set up, helping them get established, whether they are property owners or not to begin with, whether they ran businesses before or not. That's where we come in to sort of provide that guidance to help them bring up what we call a proposal. So when we send it over to the lenders, it's called a proposal. We spend that time to, learn about the customer, what are their needs, what are they trying to achieve, to build that proposal and that story in such a way that when we do approach, whether it's a high street bank, an alternative funder, a challenger bank, peer-to-peer lender, whatever it might be, that they are in the best possible position to sort of get the best optimal rates and the most appropriate funder for what their needs for what their needs are really. And we spend that time to build that story, and that's what we do. 90% of our work is done before we even submit the application. Once we've submitted the application, it's just a case of putting it into underwriting, and they either go yes or no. So most, like similar to yourselves, before you put the planning in, before you send it off for approvals, you've got to put all that legwork in first to make sure you put that best possible foot forward for the client, really.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that some of our clients are really sensitive about, and some don't have to worry about, because we see a real kind of mixed bag of people that have specifically bought the plot of land that they're thinking about to do glamping and only glamping on. And then obviously there's another large portion of our clients that are doing this on land that's been historically owned by the family, or that's been handed down, and it's either an existing farm or another business that they're diversifying. And having that opportunity to separate powers and liability, most importantly, of the new business and potentially existing property, etc., can be a major concern for people. So hearing that that's an option is fantastic.
Like you said, you used to work at the bank, so it's typically we're a broker, but I prefer the word intermediary. It sounds a bit more professional, but if you really boil it down, we're essentially a broker. We're the person between the customer, us, and then we have access to all the lenders. And typically we actually have direct channels with the lenders, so direct emails to what we call BDMs over there, direct lines with underwriting and things like that, which you wouldn't typically get if you spoke as a customer to the bank. You probably called the bank recently. You usually get an automated voice, or click 1, click 2, and you've got to wait 10 minutes before you can actually speak to somebody. So what you could do, you would speak exactly. So you would speak directly to us. We have direct contacts at the lenders, whether that's, like I say, bank, high street lender, whatever. We can go directly to them, get an answer a lot quicker than what a direct customer can get. So it speeds up that whole process for the customer. We know as well what looks like a good agreement and what looks like a bad agreement. So we can help tailor that to make sure it's the best forward and get it done a lot quicker than if the customer just went direct anyway. And usually we have a bit more negotiation power as well. So, with us putting so much business towards the lenders each and every week, we have that power to say, well, look, can we alter these terms slightly? Can we change this slightly to get it to the point of where we need to be to get the customer happy and the lender happy, really?
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Okay, so that's a big thing for clients, is to try and get an indication of where they're going to be financially as early as possible.
Yeah.
Now, that's probably the most difficult bit, I would imagine, of your job, with the way that the market fluctuates and the way that APRs can change and shift. But is there like a typical percentage of the total borrow that clients would need to come with as a minimum in order to be able to do it? Presumably they can't 100% finance a project.
Well, in all honesty, you can. If it's, say, for example, a hire purchase or a finance lease, with the finance lease, you can almost do 100%. The minimum payment that would be required would be 1 month as an advance payment. So we call that, say, for example, it's over 60 months. That would be 1 plus 59 or 1 plus 35 and so on and so forth. So that's the minimum that we would potentially require to put forward. But as a sort of guideline, I always recommend to have at least sort of 10% of what you're looking to borrow in available funds. Not so much that we will use that, or not so much that that's for the deposit and you'll spend that. It's good evidence for the lenders to show affordability. So, we don't want to do finance agreements or give something that's unaffordable, or they can't continue to make those payments. So we need to evidence that the customer can afford those payments, that it is the right product for them. So I would recommend sort of 10% as a guideline, but it's not fixed. If you have less than that, fine. We're happy to help and see what we can do. If you have more than that, great. We can go up to as much as you want, really.
No, it makes sense. It's hard to approach someone and say, "Go and lend me 200 grand," but I've only got 50 quid just now.
Yeah, and also from the customer's point of view as well. From the customer's point of view, I would suggest that having at least sort of 3 months of running costs just to cover yourself in those first 3 months of setting up. So if there is any peaks and troughs, you can weather that storm really. And if I'm honest, that's just smart business sense, really.
Yeah, just basic sense, isn't it? Have yourself a buffer there and make sure that you're not relying entirely on lending.
Yeah.
So if customers are looking for indicative figures, because generally we at Glamtech, we find there's this little bottleneck in the process where they've had a feasibility assessment done, they know whether or not they want to proceed to a planning application, but they want to know what the numbers are going to be if they get approved, because they don't want to spend the money on planning and then find, actually, I can't afford to fund the projects that I've seen in my mind's eye. So trying to get indicative figures for our customers is tricky, because obviously the market is so temperamental. But are you able to provide indicative figures on the proviso? Obviously, you can't guarantee that the rates will be the same.
Yeah, exactly that. So like you say, we all know that over the last couple of years, the base rate's gone up and everything is slightly more expensive. And that changes all the time. Every month, every couple of months, we're getting a slight up, a slight down. So what we do is we can simply, if you have just a very basic interest and you have a rough guideline of your requirements and your personal situation, just pick up the phone, give us a call, send us an email, and we'll be happy to quote you out on the phone and give you a rough idea. But like you say, bear in mind, once we actually dig down into the financials, credit checks, etc., that may fluctuate from there. The advertised rate at the moment, the sort of headline rate that we can offer, as low as it gets, is 6.5% APR. Okay. But bear in mind that would be for like an established business, profitable, good turnover, good credit, X, Y, and Z. But that's the headline rate. So it's sort of just from there upwards at the moment, and then depends on the product. So, like you say, if it's a development or a bridge or asset finance, they will typically garner slightly different rates, but 6.5 is the headline. And like you say, that changes all the time. It just depends on the customer's standing and the current business standing, really.
Of course, yeah. And like any lending, you would expect the APR to go up with risk, obviously.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, and potentially the amount of borrowing as well, it would come down. So, what over the years, what have you seen as the kind of the biggest hurdle to customers getting approved for their finance? What, outside of credit rating, because obviously that's something that most people are relatively conscious of. Is there one kind of thing that you've come up against
outside of credit rating? So most of the time, I'll be honest, it is credit rating. I know you said outside of credit rating, but most of the time it's credit rating because people assume that, well, my business is here and my personal is here. At those sort of initial stages, day zero, the only thing we can base it off is how is the personal credit and things like that. So I would recommend anybody that's thinking about doing something like this or speaking to yourself or me, maybe do just a credit check, on yourself. I think they're about 15, 20 quid. I can't remember. But just do a credit check. Have a look through over the last couple of years. Make sure you've not got any accidental missed payments because, that happens from time to time where a payment didn't go through and you didn't realize, or it's the day later, and all those things will count. Or parking tickets, that comes up more often than you would think, a parking ticket that they forgot about. And and it was put on their credit file and it went to the wrong address. So do a little credit check on yourself. Make sure your personal is reasonably good and go back through and check all the sort of payments to make sure they are reasonably clear. And we can still help customers that have had maybe a CCJ in the past or a failed business. It just takes a little bit more structure and a little bit more of that story to build up that proposal a little bit more.
Fair enough.
But as opposed to that, in terms of the hurdles, to be honest with you, it's so much choice out there. It's people deciding what equipment they want to go for, really. And, whether they go for a pod, whether they go for a yurt, whether they go for a shepherd's hut. And you'll be surprised the amount of time we do the application and then the person changes their mind about what they want to get because they've seen something a bit fancier or a bit better.
I wouldn't believe it. We deal with it at the planning stage as well. We get people approved and they go, oh, fantastic, we're going to go bigger. You go, No,
Yeah,
no,
and then
you
you've got to
don't.
resubmit
No,
it.
you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. But I mean, it's brilliant because it shows how enthusiastic they are about it. But you're like, really could have done with knowing that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, like you say, oh, it's only
Yeah,
10 grand more expensive. Well, 10 grand brings you into this different bracket, and we need to do this extra
yeah,
check and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I would say that trips us up
yeah,
sometimes. But like I say,
100%.
like you guys, we're happy to do the work. Just keep us posted about it.
Yeah, communication is key. And on the credit score front as well, if I can put my old banking hat on for a moment, a lot of the high street banks have a way you can check your credit score through the app, which will give you a bit of an indication, but won't tell you what's causing it.
Yeah.
So Experian are generally the best to go and get. I think you can get a free copy still from Experian
Okay.
of your credit report, which will show you all those kind of missed payments and contributing factors. So really solid piece of advice that if you've never done it before, don't do one of the TV advert ones because they don't tend to score you as unbiasedly as Experian. Experian are generally the lender that most financial lenders look at
Yeah,
for your
they
credit
do.
score. So,
And also
go speak to
touching on
Experian.
that as well in terms of doing the credit check, be honest as well. We have customers,
Yeah,
one of my questions is, have you had any adverse in the last 5 years, CCJs, IVAs, etc.? And be honest with us, we need to know these things before we propose it, because as soon as we do the credit check, it's going to flag and we're going to see it.
yeah,
And at that point, we've sort of gone to the lender without being 100% honest, as it were. So
yeah,
if you let us know about them and we can have a chat, we can go on the front foot and say, yeah, this happened. This is how we remedied it, and this is how the customer's not going to make sure it happens again. So you give us that ammunition so we can actually speak to them and give them that sort of front foot approach, really.
yeah. As with everything else, honesty is 100% the best policy.
But yeah,
So, I think we've covered a good gambit here. Anyone who is looking to find out more or wants to have just even an initial chat, start to put their feelers out there,
yeah.
we will put all of James's contact details in the description as usual. Website, phone number, email. Give the man a shout, or if you'd rather reach out to us first, we can always make an introduction for you as well if you've already been dealing with us. We like to wrap most episodes up by asking our guests for a little nugget of advice, or kind of one thing that they would offer to someone starting out to maybe save them a little bit of time or save them a bit of money. Have you got a pearl of wisdom you can offer?
Yes. Just start that process as early as possible. You'll be surprised the amount of times I speak to people and they say, right, I've got the planning approved. I've got the pod. It's coming next week. Can we get it financed? So start that process as soon as you can, because A, it means we have enough time to remedy any problems that there might be. B, it means that then, the supplier's not being held up and things like that. We can potentially then sort of build in deposits and sort of prepayments and things like that ahead of time. And just really to have enough time to build that proposal in the best possible fashion we can, really.
Yeah.
That's it, really. Just start it as soon as possible.
Do you know, it's amazing. It's almost like you must have watched every episode of my podcast, which I'm sure you have. It's wildly popular, but it's amazing how many guests say the exact same thing. Like, just start early, get started. Like, go and gather that information. Fantastic. Well, listen, James, thank you very much for taking the time out to come and chat to us today. As I said, details below for anyone who wants to get in touch. And I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of you over the coming months.
Fantastic. Great to speak with you, Ollie, as always.
A pleasure. Cheers, James.
See you later, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.